should have known from the moment I met her that she would be a problem. You know how some people smile at you, but there's something in their eyes that tells you they despise your existence? Yeah, that was my mother-in-law, Patricia. The first time she laid eyes on me, she scanned me like a TSA agent looking for drugs. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this woman wasn't going to make my life easy. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? I thought I could win her over. I was naive. I met my husband, Daniel, at work. We were both ambitious, climbing the corporate ladder, but while he came from a well-off family, I had to fight for every opportunity. No silver spoon, no cushy inheritance. Just me, my hustle, and a mountain of student debt. When we got serious, I was excited to meet his family. I imagined warm dinners, polite conversations, maybe even a motherly hug from his mom. Instead, I got Patricia, who looked at me like I was the dirt under her designer heels. "Oh," she said when Daniel introduced me. Just oh. No smile, no handshake, no fake enthusiasm. Just an awkward silence that made me feel like I had gate-crashed an exclusive club where I didn't belong. The moment we sat down for dinner, the interrogation began. "So, what do your parents do?" she asked, sipping her expensive wine like it was holy water. "My mom is a nurse and my dad was a mechanic," I answered, not realizing it was a trap. She raised an eyebrow. "Was?" I swallowed. "He passed away when I was 16. "Oh," she fake pouted. "How tragic." But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't actually sad. She was gathering ammunition. For the rest of the night, every word out of my mouth was met with a thinly veiled insult. "You went to community college first before transferring? Oh, that's smart. Very cost-effective. So you don't have any family money? That must be a unique experience for you." And then, the final blow, delivered with a sweet, fake smile. I suppose Daniel doesn't mind. He's always been a generous soul. She might as well have called me a leech to my face. Daniel didn't notice. He was too busy enjoying his steak, oblivious to the power play happening across the table. And I sat there, forcing a smile, pretending I didn't feel the sting of every backhanded comment. I should have said something. I should have called her out, but I didn't. Instead, I convinced myself that she would come around. I was so wrong. A week later, Daniel proposed, a beautiful, intimate moment just for us. And when he told his mother, her reaction was immediate. "Oh, sweetie, are you sure? You're still young. No need to rush into anything." When that didn't work, she switched tactics. She asked him about prenups, about financial stability, about whether I was on the same level as him. And when Daniel brushed it off, she came for me directly. We were at brunch when she finally said it. "You know, dear," she started, stirring her overpriced latte, "I've seen women like you before." I frowned. "Women like me?" She sighed dramatically, like she was so tired of dealing with gold diggers, but was graciously giving me the benefit of the doubt. "Women who see a good man and latch on," she said, giving me a pointed look. "Who take and contribute nothing. It's just a shame because Daniel deserves someone who brings as much to the table as he does." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't be offended, dear. I'm just saying, love is one thing, but a successful marriage requires equality." She said it with a smile, but her eyes were daring me to argue. And I just laughed, a low, bitter laugh, because that was the moment I realized I would never be good enough for her. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I loved Daniel, I would always be the outsider. And something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to defend myself. I was going to teach her a lesson she would never forget. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled and sipped my coffee, letting her believe she had won. But in my head, I was already planning my next move. Patricia wanted a gold digger? Fine, I'd give her a show. It started small. I leaned into her assumptions, dropping little hints that fueled her paranoia. When Daniel and I went out, I'd casually mention a luxury item I wished I had. A designer bag, a high-end spa day, a trip to Europe. Just enough to make her ears perk up when Daniel mentioned it later. "She has expensive taste," Patricia told him one evening when she thought I wasn't listening. "Yeah," he laughed, "but she works hard for what she wants." She didn't like that. She needed me to be a problem. So I became one. At family dinners, I let Daniel pay for everything. I played the role of the sweet, doting fiancé who just adored being taken care of. I watched as her patience thinned, her fake smiles strained. She started making snide remarks louder, bolder. "Daniel, have you considered a prenup? You know, just in case." "She's never offered to pay, has she? It's always on you." "She reminds me of that girl your cousin married. You remember how that ended." I let it build. Every dig, every snub, every whispered warning she gave him. I wanted her to feel certain that she had figured me out, that her precious son was being manipulated. Then I set the trap. One evening, I casually mentioned wanting to quit my job. "Daniel makes enough for both of us," I said lightly. "Maybe I'll just be a housewife." He shrugged. "If that's what you want." Patricia nearly choked on her wine. She didn't even wait until I left the room to start her meltdown. "She's using you," she hissed. "She's setting you up so she can take half of everything when she leaves you." I knew Daniel. He wasn't stupid, but he also didn't like drama. He dismissed her, told her to drop it. She didn't. Instead, she did exactly what I needed her to do. She went digging. I made sure to leave my laptop open when she visited, accidentally leaving tabs open with searches like "How much alimony can a wife get?" and ways to secure financial support in marriage. She took the bait. Within days, she was calling lawyers, digging into my past, even trying to contact my old employers. And then she made her biggest mistake. She confronted me directly. I was alone at home when she barged in, seething. "I knew it," she spat. "You're a manipulative, money-hungry fraud." I tilted my head. "What are you talking about?" "Your plans," she sneered. "Quitting your job, living off my son, plotting your divorce settlement before you're even married. Do you think I'm stupid?" I crossed my arms, letting the silence stretch. Then I smiled. "You're right." She froze. "What?" "You're absolutely right," I said smoothly. "I am planning something, but not what you think." Her smugness wavered. "What do you mean?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You'll find out soon enough." And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there, rattled. Because the real revenge? That was just getting started. Patricia thought she had me cornered, convinced she'd exposed me. But she had no idea she was the one playing into my hands. She started warning everyone, Daniel's dad, his sister, even his coworkers. "She's after his money," she'd whisper, eyes wide with manufactured concern. "She's setting him up." I let her dig her own grave. One night at dinner, she turned up the pressure. "Daniel," she sighed, swirling her wine, "have you noticed how she never talks about her future? Only yours?" I tilted my head innocently. "Oh, but I do have plans." Daniel smiled. "Yeah, we've talked about a few things." Patricia's eyes sharpened. "Like what?" I tapped my chin as if thinking. "Well, I was looking at houses the other day. Daniel works so hard. I thought it'd be nice if we got a bigger place. Something grander." Daniel chuckled, not realizing the bomb I was setting off. "We're not in a rush, babe." I sighed dramatically. "But we could be. You have the savings. And besides, a good investment is never a bad idea." Patricia stiffened. "His savings?" I looked at her, feigning confusion. "Of course. I mean, what's his is mine, right?" That did it. Her fork hit the plate with a sharp clang. "Are you serious?" she hissed. Daniel, still clueless, tried to laugh it off. "Mom, chill." "Oh, I should chill?" Her voice rose, venom laced between her words. "She's sinking her claws into you, and you're letting her." I gasped, placing a hand on my chest like a scandalized housewife. "Patricia, that's such a hurtful thing to say." She turned to Daniel. "She's manipulating you, Daniel. Open your eyes. She's a gold digger." Silence. The whole restaurant stared. Daniel's face darkened. "Mom, stop." "No, I won't stop," she snapped. "I have proof." That was my cue. I leaned forward, voice low and sharp. "Then show it." Patricia fumbled with her purse, yanking out printouts of my search history, my job resignation drafts, even an old social media post where I joked about marrying rich. She shoved them at Daniel. "See? She's planning everything. She's going to bleed you dry." Daniel looked down at the papers, brows furrowing. Then, slowly, he exhaled. "Mom," he said quietly, "this is insane." I smirked. "I can't believe you went through my things." I wiped a fake tear. "You really don't trust me, do you?" Patricia's hands shook. "Daniel, she's gaslighting you." "No," he cut in, voice firm. "You're the one who crossed the line." And just like that, she lost. The restaurant murmured, whispers floating in the air. She had embarrassed herself, ruined her own credibility. And I just sat back and watched as Daniel stood up, tossing the papers onto the table. "We're done here," he said. Patricia's face crumbled. "Daniel, please." But he was already walking out, and I followed, shooting her one last look over my shoulder. She wanted a war? She had no idea what was coming next. Patricia had spent years carefully curating her image. To the outside world, she was a woman of grace, a perfect matriarch who always had her family's best interests at heart. She wasn't just a mother. She was a social figure, someone whose presence commanded respect. People looked up to her, sought her approval, and wanted to be associated with her name. She thrived on it. That dinner where she humiliated herself? That was just the first crack in her carefully polished reputation, and I was about to shatter it completely. After the public meltdown, she went into full-blown damage control. The text messages to Daniel became relentless, first masked as concern, then laced with guilt, and finally outright manipulation. She told him she only wanted to protect him, that she was trying to do what was best for him. When he didn't respond the way she wanted, she turned to emotional blackmail, reminding him of everything she had ever done for him, how she had raised him, how he was abandoning her. But here's the thing. Patricia had already lost control. The more she pushed, the more she proved my point. Every overstep, every panicked attempt to regain dominance only pushed Daniel further away. The exhaustion in his voice whenever she came up drained him, and I could see it wearing on him. "I can't keep doing this," he muttered one night, staring at yet another long-winded message from her. He didn't even bother reading it before tossing his phone onto the couch. That's exactly where I wanted him. While Patricia was running herself in circles trying to regain control over Daniel, I was quietly tightening the noose around her. The thing about people like Patricia is that their power comes from perception. She wasn't feared because of anything real. She was feared because people believed she had influence. Take that perception away, and she was nothing. So I started planting seeds. It was all about subtlety, never outright accusations, just well-placed comments, little hints that made people second-guess everything they thought they knew about her. "Oh, Patricia must be really stressed lately. I hope she's okay. She seems a little off these days." She's been so fixated on Daniel's relationship lately. Maybe it's just hard for her to let go. I feel for her. She's always been protective, but it's starting to seem intense. Rumors don't need to be loud to be effective. They just need to exist. I made sure these whispers reached the right people, her inner circle, the women whose approval she desperately sought. At social events, I played the part of the concerned daughter-in-law, never speaking ill of her outright, but always letting the gossip take its natural course. And it worked. Soon, people started noticing on their own. They saw how tightly wound she had become, how her usual composure was slipping. They started questioning whether she had always been this controlling or if something had changed. And then, I took it a step further. Patricia had already proven she was willing to dig into my life. She had gone through my past, contacted my old employers, and even tried to get in touch with my friends. I knew she was the type to snoop, so I gave her something to find. I made sure to leave my laptop open when she visited, not in an obvious way, but just enough for her curiosity to get the better of her. The screen showed exactly what I wanted her to see: search tabs on financial security in marriage, prenuptial agreements, and long-term financial planning for stay-at-home spouses. It was all vague enough that she couldn't outright accuse me of anything, but suggestive enough that she would spiral. And spiral she did. Days later, she showed up at my apartment, vibrating with anger. Her voice trembled with rage as she ranted about how she knew I was planning something, how she had seen the proof, how she was going to make sure Daniel saw me for what I really was. I didn't argue, I just smiled. That drove her crazy. Patricia had spent weeks trying to poison Daniel against me. When she realized he wasn't listening, she went for the next best thing, his family. So, when his father suggested a family gathering to sort things out, I knew exactly what was coming. She thought she could turn everyone against me. Thought that if she had an audience, she could manipulate the situation in her favor. She didn't realize she was walking straight into her own downfall. The evening started off tense, but civil. Patricia was faking composure, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when the conversation shifted to our engagement, she couldn't help herself. She brought up my supposed financial motives, throwing in every accusation she had spent weeks building up. She ranted about how I was manipulating Daniel, about how she had evidence, about how I was planning to take everything from him. But instead of making me look guilty, she made herself look deranged. Lisa had been watching her mother's antics for weeks, and this was the moment that pushed her over the edge. She turned on Patricia, calling out the obsession with controlling Daniel, the paranoia, the refusal to accept that he was a grown man who could make his own decisions. She didn't just defend me. She completely tore apart her mother's credibility in front of everyone. The rest of the family, already primed by the rumors I had planted, started to see Patricia in a new light. Instead of the wise matriarch, she looked desperate, overbearing, unhinged. And Daniel? He didn't even have to say much. His silence spoke louder than any argument. By the time the night ended, it was clear. Patricia had lost. She had fought so hard to take me down, and in the process, she had burned every bridge she had. Daniel walked out of that gathering without looking back, and I followed, glancing at Patricia one last time. She sat there, stunned, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. And I had won, but I wasn't done just yet. She had called me a gold digger. She had tried to ruin my name. Now, I was about to show her what real consequences looked like. Patricia should have known when to quit. Any rational person would have backed off after losing their son's trust, their family's respect, and their social standing. But Patricia wasn't rational. She was desperate. And desperate people don't just fade into the background, they self-destruct. In the weeks following the family gathering, she kept trying to claw her way back into Daniel's life. The texts and calls didn't stop. When Daniel ignored her, she sent messages through his father, his sister, even his coworkers. The guilt-tripping turned into veiled threats, hints that if he didn't come to his senses soon, he would regret it. I let her spiral. Then I gave her one final push. Patricia thrived on power, and power requires an audience. She still had a few social allies left, women who believed her version of the story, who thought she was just a concerned mother trying to protect her son. These were the people she needed to believe in her, the ones who still gave her a shred of credibility. So I fed them the final piece of the puzzle. A few well-placed whispers, a few manipulated truths, and soon the right people accidentally found out that Patricia had been digging into my financial background, hiring private investigators, and, most damning of all, trying to manipulate Daniel's workplace into siding with her. She had crossed a line, and now everyone knew. Word spread like wildfire. Even the people who had previously supported her started backing away, unwilling to be associated with her chaos. It was one thing to warn a son about his fiancée. It was another to harass him at work, to try and control his entire life. Her reputation crumbled. One evening, Daniel came home and sighed, rubbing his temples. I can't do this anymore. He had been exhausted for weeks, but this time was different. This time, he was done. I don't care if she's my mother, he muttered. She's toxic. I don't want her in my life. I stayed quiet, letting him reach his own conclusion. And when he finally blocked her number, I knew it was over. She had lost him completely. I didn't have to do anything more. Patricia had destroyed herself, but for my own satisfaction, I wanted her to know it. So I called her. When she picked up, there was no pretense, no fake warmth, no attempt to salvage things, just pure, seething rage. What do you want? She snapped. I smiled, letting the silence stretch. Then I said, You should have been nicer to me. She went off, spewing every insult she could muster, but it didn't matter. She was screaming into the void. She had already lost. And I had everything she tried to take from me. Daniel and I got married a few months later. Patricia wasn't invited. She tried to crash the wedding, of course, but security turned her away. Watching her be escorted out of her own son's life was the perfect ending to her story. She had spent so much time calling me a gold digger, but in the end, she was the one who had lost everything. And I had won. Completely.